Hello and welcome to the week 9 version of Nerding Out with Nick Boddiford. I am your host, Nick Boddiford, and I'm joined by the one and only Ryan Reynolds, writer for Establish the Run and Own the Moment NFT. Ryan, how are you?
Good, Nick, man. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited to talk to you. We've had a couple of exchanges. I love your stuff. You kind of opened my eyes to a different, I guess, way to look at sports. I was a subscriber to Establish the Run for 2 years. I didn't do it this year only because you can't bet in Washington. But I always loved reading your stuff because it was this window to sports betting. Like I'm not allowed to touch it because I'm in Seattle. But I love your work. It's fantastic. And anybody who is in a betting state or in a non-betting state should be subscribing to Establish the Run to check out Ryan's work. We're going to dive right in this week. We're doing 3 guys that we want to talk about a piece, and we are starting things off with must start. So Ryan, can you give us your first?
Yeah, Austin Eckler is kind of an obvious name in a lot of ways, but against that Philadelphia linebacker group, I think he could have an absolute field day in the passing game. Uh, I'd be interested in Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen as well, but I think Eckler could really, really kill them in that phase.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I have him as, I think, the RB6 on the week, and I'm just looking at they're getting whooped by running backs, especially in the receiving game. Over 7 running back receptions per game, 54.4 receiving yards. Yeah, I like that a lot. He's so much fun to watch. I got a little nervous last week with the hip injury, but he went like 11 carries and 10 targets. He can't be stopped. All right, moving on to my number 1 must start this week. So I was breaking down the New York Giants injuries at the wide receiver position, and these guys they're totally, like, they're shellacked. So my must start is Kadarius Toney. And what we're looking at is Golladay has returned to practice, but hyperextended knee. We don't know that he's coming back this week. Sterling Shepard, it looks like his quad flared up again. Dante Pettis suffered a shoulder injury. John Ross, I think, also he was downgraded to a limited participant in practice with a quad injury this week. So it basically leaves Kadarius Toney, Darius Slayton, and Colin Johnson. And I personally am not intimidated by the Raiders defensive back group at all. And with Barkley, his status is like totally up in the air at this point. I think 10 targets and maybe even some carries for Kadarius Toney are like totally in the range of potential outcomes here against the Raiders. What do you think?
Yeah, in my waiver column, and I just wrote preparing for the playoffs up for Established Run as well. I've been high on Kadarius Toney as well. He's definitely, anyone who asks me to drop him, it's an outright no. We're looking for difference makers, right? Both in the short term and the long term. And to me, he's the most talented pass catcher on the Giants. We've already seen that they're willing to give him big volume. When they got blown out by the Rams a few weeks ago, he was essentially the focal point of the offense until he got knocked out with an injury. So I'm with you on that. I'll probably play a little Toney in DFS this week as well.
Cool. I like it. All right, give us your second must start.
I'm going to go with T. Higgins. T. Higgins' usage has been solid. He hasn't really hit, but since teams are going to have to start bracketing Jamar Chase because he's pretty much killing everyone, he's a guy I like long-term and short-term, where Cleveland in particular probably focuses more on Chase and takes their chances with Higgins. So I'm thinking he's an 80 yards and a touchdown kind of guy this week.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, the usage in that Bengals receiving core has been really interesting. Where, like, I was sure that Boyd and Uzoma were going to be focal points 2 weeks ago, and like Uzoma got loose for a couple long TDs, but they showed that Higgins is like, I mean, Chase is doing the flashy stuff, but it seems to me like Higgins might just be like the de facto number 1 there. I mean, he's kind of running as the X while Chase handles like Z receiver duty. So I like it. I think there's room for all 3 of those guys to kind of do some work this week, but I like it. And I was a T Higgins doubter. When he came out, I was not interested in him. I get caught up in combine numbers and was not into his stuff. But yeah, I like that. That's cool. All right. My second must start is AJ Dillon. I was shocked by how much they were using him the other night in prime time. And now they get a date with the Kansas City front seven. The Chiefs are getting a little healthier. Anthony Hitchens is coming back, and Chris Jones, he's healthy now too. So I think, they can look a little better than they have so far this season, but like there's only so many strides this defensive unit can take. And with Jordan Love at quarterback, I think the Green Bay game plan is just going to be like 30 combined touches for Dillon and Aaron Jones. And so anybody, in need of a running back, if he's still out there available, I think AJ Dillon is a viable running back too this week against Kansas City. How about you?
Well, you know me, I'm a game plan guy, so I loved everything you just said. With Jordan Love, I would also think that the focal point of that game plan is going to be let's run the ball as much as we can. Since the Chiefs' offense has not been themselves lately, I think that could even happen long term. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I think 15 carries with a touchdown is very, very much on the table for Dillon this week.
Cool, awesome. All right, give us your number 3 guy. Just anybody you want to talk about.
Yeah, this one, again, this is an obvious one in season long, but to give you a bring back with Kadarius Toney, I think Darren Waller this week. I don't think the Giants have anyone that can really handle him.
I like that. I like that a lot. And everything going on with the Raiders right now, I feel like Carr's just going to lean on the guy he knows.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. His target share probably goes up this week. We kind of liked him as a buy low option before this, terrible tragedy, but I think that results in more opportunities for Waller as well. And I think it starts right now.
Yeah. Great pick. All right. My third and final is Patrick Mahomes. And with Mahomes, there's a part of me that just, it's very difficult to rank him right now. And this was the first week that I accepted that I should probably be considering him as more of a back end quarterback one. Now I say that, and then I look at Green Bay, who, they signed Whitney Merciless 2 weeks ago, and he ended up playing meaningful snaps over each of the last 2 weeks. They've got another rotational defensive end, Kingsley Kakay. I'm not even familiar with the guy, but he's looking like he's going to miss this week with a concussion, and he's playing like 40% of snaps. Yair Alexander's out. This seems like the week that Mahomes should get back on track, but I thought that for sure last week, and I didn't think there was any chance that he was going to flop against Tennessee. So I want to tell people, treat Mahomes as an elite quarterback one, but I had to drop him a little bit, quarterback 8 to 10 range probably. But I want to get your take on him. What do you think of Mahomes right now?
You've been traumatized a little bit. I understand, especially after that Titans game. I mean, I don't think anyone expected that. Where last week's game against the Giants fell short of my expectations as well, but that was more reasonable, I'd say. I'm actually with you. I love that game, obviously, from a game stacking standpoint until Rodgers went out with COVID, where now I'm with you. I think Green Bay tries to slow it down, tries to grind it out on the ground, where I haven't figured out if I like Travis Kelce or Tyree Kill more this week yet. But I'll also play Mahomes and DFS, especially because you're right. We're at the point now where you kind of have to take a step back and say, like, do I have to downgrade this guy a little bit? Yeah. Where they need to win. Green Bay is also in a comfortable position where I don't want to say that they're going to be unmotivated, but KC still needs to win games every single week. I think they get back on track as well.
Cool. All right. Well, Ryan, I appreciate your time so much. I'm a big admirer of your work. It was really nice of you to come on and give me a few minutes to pick your brain.
Likewise, Nick. Look forward to doing it again.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, guys. So we are shifting over to the full-on Sunday slate, as we do. Kicking things off bright and early, 10 a.m. here on the West Coast. Getting to the schedule here. Atlanta Falcons at New Orleans Saints. Man, that was so fun. Everybody, you all should go consider subscribing to Established Run if you don't already. Ryan Reynolds does fantastic work. That whole group does fantastic work, but his futures bets are like fantastic. And something that was publicly discussed on Twitter was he's been on Trevon Diggs. He was on Trevon Diggs as Defensive Player of the Year a while ago, and I'm very, very sharp guy. And I encourage anybody who's not an Established Run subscriber to consider just to read Ryan's work. All right, quick sip of water, and we are off. So, Nope, and I left myself on mute there. So yeah, we're off to a great start. Kicking things off with the Atlanta Falcons at New Orleans Saints. So obviously the biggest storyline here is the Calvin Ridley news, and we don't know when it is he's going to be returning. And so we just have to plan without him. This game is totaled at 41.5 points on the over under, which is not, that's not going to be the highest one on the slate here. I still think that some points can be scored, but it's not going to be the most lucrative outing that any of us have ever seen. So what does that mean for Matt Ryan? I think that he's a volatile quarterback too. The New Orleans Saints defense has been getting contributors back, and injury starters who contribute very well, but have been lost due to injury. So Quan Alexander missed some time. David Onyemata, I think Onyemata might still be on the injured reserve list, but they brought back Marcus Davenport, and they're going to get after Ryan. I think that he still has the pass catching personnel, especially with the ascension of Cordell Patterson to finish as I've got him in here as quarterback 13 to 16. I think he can get in there. So if you've got him in a 2 quarterback league, I think you still start him, but it's a tough one. In terms of Cordell Patterson, so, I think he still has dual threat eligibility on Yahoo formats. So, hey, season longer is good for you. Meaning you can start him as a wide receiver or tight end. He is third best, though, among running backs in our NECC or NEC consistency ratings. The dude just goes out there. He, as evidenced by the NEC rating, he does not deviate from his standard scoring some on a weekly basis. He just produces, and I've got him, I think, is the running back 11 on the week. In terms of the wide receivers, Taji Sharp and Russell Gage. So I let myself get excited about Gage last week, and that was silly. I've never been high on Gage. Taji Sharp is the guy who filled in for Calvin Ridley in Ridley's absence. And, that's notable because they had Olamide Zaccheaus there, but they just signed Sharp, brought him on, and they started him right away. I think Sharp ended up leading the receiving group in targets, but neither of these guys are people that I want to start this week. Like Marshawn Lattimore is not to be trifled with these two guys, and obviously Zaccheaus fits that bill as well. Don't start him in any format. But Kyle Pitts, so I want to say he was a victim of variance, and 2, he was a victim of Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore evidently went to the coaching staff and said straight up, "Let me take Pitts," which is extremely impressive. The guy, he came off PUP. That was his first game off the physically unable to perform list. He played 32 snaps. He had a pass defended and an interception. He was a monster. And Pitts, who was in his 8th or 7th, I don't remember when their bye is, but I think 8th pro game, had to go up against a guy who's an all pro. That's a tall ask. And, fortunately, he doesn't have to go up against Stephon Gilmore this week, but he does have to go up against the New Orleans Saints stout defensive back group. Probably going to get some Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on him. I think that because CJC or whatever the abbreviation is, he's a safety, or he's listed as a safety, but he just plays nickel corner all the time. And Pitts is basically splitting reps between the exterior and running routes in the slot. He lines up as an inline tight end on 13% of his targets or routes or so. So he's going to get a lot of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and that'll be tough. But the dude, he should have the workload there. I mean, his usage dipped a little bit. I think he saw 6 targets last week, and they that hurt him. So I think that they're going to get back to giving Pitts 10 targets. The dude, there's no question about his talent. He is the guy that we thought that he was. Like, everyone who was, excited about him as the generational number one tight end prospect we've ever seen. Like, yeah, it's looking like that's who he is. So stay strong with Kyle Pitts. Mike Davis, he saw an increase in the passing game usage. We can give him that. I'm ranking him as a running back 4 with RB3 upside, though. He is the change of pace guy now. In terms of the New Orleans Saints, I had someone ask me about Taysom Hill on Twitter. I appreciate your question. I know I had like a terse or concise tone, and I was a donkey for doing that. Just wanted to communicate efficiently, but I gotta expand my Twitter language repertoire. Anyway, Taysom Hill probably going to be the starting quarterback here. He has been practicing. He had the concussion that kept him out for a few weeks, but with Jameis Winston done for the year, torn ACL, this is the guy that they know. And Trevor Siemian is obviously not very talented. Drew Brees, Sean Payton expressed intense support for Hill ahead of the season last year, and they rolled with him for 4 games. What did he do in those 4 games? He finished between the quarterback 4 and the quarterback 11 every time in fantasy. He averaged 28.5 pass attempts, 9.75 carries. That kind of usage, it's really friggin' hard to not finish as a quarterback 1, and against the Atlanta Falcons defense, which is really as bad as it gets. I mean, I think that you should, I think Taysom Hill should be ranked as a mid-tier quarterback 1 this week. In terms of the wide receivers, Callaway, Harris, Traquan Smith, they are all downfield players. Callaway's skill set is the most well-rounded, but I've got him as a wide receiver 4 and everybody else as that or worse. It's going to be tough for any of them to succeed this week, but they could get loose because it's the Atlanta Falcons. So like in redraft leagues, I'm not looking at any of those guys. Callaway, if you have to, but again, only as a wide receiver 4. In DFS, yeah, sure, throw a dart. Adam Troutman has suddenly seen an increase in his routes run over the last 3 weeks, excuse me. But Taysom Hill going in a quarterback kind of makes things a little bit more difficult. What we saw with Hill and his target dispersal was in the first 2. So week 1, when or the first week that he started last season, he basically loaded up Michael Thomas with work. And I think Emmanuel Sanders was second in the pecking order with 5 targets. The second week, Thomas led the team with 6, and there were a bunch of guys who had 2. It was bizarre. And Taysom Hill just, ran his way to success. Weeks 3 and 4 is when he started to diversify his passing portfolio. And he got week 3, of his starting tenure, I think that Thomas led the team with 10, and then he had like Emmanuel Sanders and Alvin Kamara, I think, with 6 targets, something like that, and more of the same in week 4, where he still had like a number 1 guy that he went to. Actually, it might have been Alvin Kamara that was the number 1 target in that 4th start for him. But point being, we don't know what to think really with Adam Troutman. We're gonna have to see what goes on. The dude is a talented pass catcher, and he's the team's best run block. He's one of the league's best run blocking tight ends. So it's a coin flip as to what he's going to do this week. In terms of the running backs, Mark Ingram immediately came in and saw work after being acquired via trade. Kamara's snap share dropped to 67%, which was a season low, as did his route running percentage, 72.4, which I think was also a season low. So that's not great. Now, what to expect with Hill at the helm? It's a little bit murky, but I think that they'll go run heavy with Kamara and with Ingram. The Atlanta Falcons are allowing 23.6 half-point PPR points per game, 9th most in the NFL. I've got Kamara as a top 5 running back, but his passing game usage is very much in flux right now. Mark Ingram, I think, is ranked as the RB 37. So he's the premier running back 34 on the week. Denver Broncos at Dallas Cowboys. Double checking where the line is right now. over under set at 49.5 points. So that's a lot. There's going to be points aplenty here. Teddy Bridgewater, he really flopped last week in a good matchup, but there are so many passing game options here. I think that he's a high floor quarterback too, who can get things going if Dallas scores early. The issue there, we're going to get to that with the Dallas side of things, is that they might run the clock out. Game script is going to be interesting here, but Teddy Bridgewater, high floor quarterback too, could get into the back end of the quarterback one ranks. Probably quarterback 14 is like his best finish though. Wide receivers, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick. It's very crowded. Sutton, he plays the downfield role, which is volatile. Jerry Jeudy is in the slot, and Tim Patrick is basically operating as the X. Patrick caught a perfect 3 of 3 targets for 64 yards last week. That is great efficiency, but it's not good volume. I have all guys as wide receiver 4s this week. I hate to say that, but they are wide receiver 4s. Jeudy has the best matchup. He's going up against slot cornerback Jordan Lewis, who's just okay. Dallas's defense is good. Jordan Lewis is just okay. I think Jeudy can get going there. Sutton and Patrick will basically rotate having to face off against Trevon Diggs. It's good that they're not getting shadowed, but you don't love that. So wide receiver 4 is there with Jeudy is the best bet to get into the top, maybe 24, probably top 36. Tight end situation here. So Noah Fant, Albert Okwuegbunam. Fant went on the COVID-19 reserve list. He is vaccinated though, so he can come back if he's able to produce back-to-back negative PCR tests over a 48-hour window. I don't know if he's had one yet. He might have already produced one, but you'll need to go check that out. If he is inactive, Albert Okwuegbunam is a fantasy tight end 1. He's volatile, but he's a fantasy tight end 1. If they're both active, then they're tight end 2s, and that's a real big bummer. In terms of the running backs, Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. So Gordon, he's not going away. And I was saying this before, there was a possibility that he was going to get traded, but like he's a very capable veteran back, and Vic Fangio's the head coach. He's not going to go away. And I will never stop singing Dwayne McFarland's praises for nailing that in June or July of last summer. So Gordon last week, 10 carries, 47 yards, 1 touchdown. Javonte Williams, 9 carries, 35 yards. So Gordon ran more efficiently. Gordon caught 3 of 3 passes for 15 yards and another touchdown. Javonte Williams caught 2 of 4 for 11 yards. Red zone usage. This one was notable. Gordon was the only back to see Gordon was the only running back to see red zone touches. He had 3. Jerry Jeudy was the only other player to see a red zone touch, period, 1 target. They know who they want to use in crunch time. Also kind of an interesting swing in usage here, I believe. I'm just double checking my notes. Yeah. Melvin Gordon was asked to block more than Javonte Williams for the 2nd consecutive week. That was only the 3rd time this season. That's notable. You might think, well, hey, that's great. He's blocking. That means Javonte Williams gets to do more. Well, no, what it means is that the coaching staff trusts him. So I'm continuing to rank Melvin Gordon 1 spot ahead of Javonte Williams. Remember, 10 carries versus 9 carries and 3 targets versus 4. Williams had more. So they continue to see basically the same like raw usage, but there are some quirks that put Melvin Gordon as the lead back here. So they are borderline running backs 2 and 3. I think that I've got them as the premier running back 3s, running backs 25 and 26 on the week. Dak Prescott. Okay, moving over to Dallas Cowboys thing. So Dak Prescott, he's on track to play. He should be good, and he's mid to high quarterback 1 this week. The Denver Broncos defense is lacking, and that's both due to trade and due to injury. In terms of the passing game components that are affected or that have been affected, Bradley Chubb, defensive end, still on or pass rusher still on injured reserve, and Von Miller obviously traded away to the Los Angeles Rams. Slot cornerback Brian Callahan. I'm gonna have to again double check in the notes here, but Bryce Callahan ended up on injured reserve last week. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he was great. He's a great slot corner. So that's a big deal. So start Dak Prescott as a high-end quarterback 1. What does it mean for the wide receiver position? So Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Cedric Wilson. Amari Cooper, good to go. He suffered a hamstring injury, I think last week, or 2 weeks ago, but he's feeling okay. And hamstrings are scary, but sometimes they're not an issue. And this is looking like it might be one of those times. Is he at an increased, risk of re-aggravation? Yeah, totally. But sometimes they are manageable, and we should just roll with that. And that's what you're doing here with Amari Cooper. But I guess I actually should have started with the potential return of Michael Gallup. And the reason being is that Michael Gallup's availability and usage in week 1 hugely influenced the way that the team ended up deploying CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. So when Gallup was active, he ended up running all of his routes basically on the perimeter in week 1. He saw, I think, 4 routes run in the slot. That left Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb to rotate between the perimeter and the slot. Well, with Gallup out, that left Cedric Wilson, who was very limited as a receiver, and he basically just hogged the majority, or he was the primary slot receiver, which kicked Cooper and Lamb to the outside. If Gallup is coming back, that means that we're going to have more slot matchups for Cooper and Lamb. That's a good thing. Right now, what I've seen is that he returned to practice, I think on yesterday, on Wednesday. And there's a chance that he plays, but I don't have his practice info for Thursday in front of me. It's their injury report is not updated right now. But if Gallup plays, then he can be started as like a volatile wide receiver 3. But another big deal here is CeeDee Lamb was unable to practice today because of an ankle injury. So he went limited participation on Wednesday, and then DNP on Thursday. That's a bad sign. Midweek downgrades, that's a really bad sign. So I actually think CeeDee Lamb is going to miss this week, which makes Amari Cooper like a high-end wide receiver 1. Also solidifies Michael Gallup's floor. Of course, if Cedric Wilson is playing, though, then that means that Amari Cooper is going to be more on the outside. Cedric Wilson deserves probably wide receiver 4 appeal, if that's the case with Bryce Callahan on injured reserve. But it's a murky situation. I'll sum it up like this. Amari Cooper, high-end wide receiver 1. Michael Gallup's a wide receiver 3 whose week 9 outcome is helped by CeeDee Lamb's potential absence. I expect CeeDee Lamb to miss. Cedric Wilson is a wide receiver 4 if Lamb is inactive. If Lamb is active, then Cedric Wilson's off your radar, and Lamb is like, then Cooper and Lamb both are wide receiver 2s. A lot of info there. Thank you for bearing with me. Tight end Dalton Schultz. So Blake Jarwin, sidekick, is trending towards missing. He is, I think, registered back-to-back DNPs. I think I saw that floating around. He was DNP on Wednesday, I believe DNP on Thursday as well. So Schultz, look, last week they had Cooper Rush at quarterback, and he had to go up against Harrison Smith in covers. That's rough. He doesn't have to do that this week. So, and Blake Jarwin might miss. So Dalton Schultz, go back to treating him as that tight end 1 that you were treating him the week prior. In terms of the running backs, so Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, we've talked about this ad nauseum so far, but it's important to keep hitting on it. Bradley Chubb out, Von Miller gone. Alexander Johnson, inside linebacker for the Denver Broncos, was PFF's highest graded inside line or run defense linebacker through, I think, the first 6 weeks of the season. Very good in run defense. He's on injured reserve, as is fellow starting inside linebacker Josie Jewell. So what is Ezekiel Elliott going to do? He's going to run up the gut to his heart's content. He is the overall running back 1 this week. I think Tony Pollard is a running back 3. This is where Teddy Bridgewater's path to success can kind of get derailed, because if the running backs can successfully control the clock, then Bridgewater, he's going to have to pass more, but like when he has the ball, he's going to have to pass more, but he might have fewer attempts. So that's why high floor quarterback 2 for Teddy Bridgewater. He does have a good ceiling, but probably high end quarterback 2 ceiling is what's reasonable. Sorry guys, wind is going nuts outside here. But anyway, New England Patriots at Carolina Panthers. Over under currently set low at 41 points. Mac Jones continues to get better. His average depth of target is rising as the season progresses. But like we were talking about earlier, the Carolina Panthers defense is very good. Stephon Gilmore was an immediate impact. And Shaq Thompson was as well, inside linebacker. He was out for a number of weeks, but he is back in his first week, back to action last week. 10 combined tackles, 8 solo, 1 pass defended, and 1 interception. That will make life hard on Mac Jones when he is passing shallow. So I've got Mac Jones as a mid to low quarterback 2. Wide receivers, Jacoby Myers, Nelson Aguilar, and Kendrick Bourne. The only guy that you're really considering here seriously is going to be Jacoby Myers. The problem is he has to go up against AJ Boye, so I'm keeping him as a low ceiling wide receiver 4. I don't think the touchdown comes this week. Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne have to go up against Gilmore and Dante Jackson. They're like wide receiver 5s or 6s. Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith. So Henry's target counts have slipped a little bit, but he is still, his team air yard share, 13.48%, is still more than double that of Jonnu Smith, 6.31. I've got Henry as a high floor tight end 1. Of course, Shaq Thompson complicates things. So don't start Jonnu Smith, probably temper expectations for Henry, but the targets are going to be there because Mac Jones likes to throw to him. I know that I just said they dipped, but with the matchups that the wide receivers have, I think that Jones is going to have to go back to the big bodied tight end target with Hunter Henry. Maybe only 6 targets, but they'll be good ones, and we need whatever we can get at tight end. Running backs, Damian Harris, Brandon Bolden, Ramondre Stevenson, and JJ Taylor. Harris is the only constant here. You can bank him for 15 touches or more. And the front 7, Carolina Panthers, Shaq Thompson is a big deal. Brian Burns, it's a good front 7, but Damian Harris is still a high-end running back 2 because of his usage. We saw some more weirdness going on with the passing game role in the Pats backfield last week. Brandon Bolden, I think, only saw 2 targets. JJ Taylor didn't see anything, but Ramondre Stevenson was in there. This is the second time in 3 weeks that we've seen some weirdness with Bolden's role. So I think the team might actually be realizing that Ramondre Stevenson has a much higher, I'm sure they know that he's a much higher ceiling. He's a dual threat running back. Hat tip Patrick Corain, I believe he said this offseason that Ramondre Stevenson was number 1 among all running backs in terms of yards per route run. And might have had like the highest grade in years. So Stevenson is talented. He's slow, but he's talented. I think that they might try to get Stevenson going here, but again, it's a really tough matchup and we don't know. So if you have to bank on one of these guys, pick your process. Is it Brandon Bolden, who's seen more reliable work this season, or is it Ramondre Stevenson, whose ceiling is higher? That's up for you to decide. I'm not recommending you start Brandon Bolden or Ramondre Stevenson. If you do, they're like running back 4s. In terms of the Carolina Panthers, this is friggin' brutal. So PJ Walker is a 5'11", 210-pound slow quarterback. So he's not a scrambler. Don't think, Russell Wilson is back here. No, it's not that. He can't move, and he has trouble seeing over the offensive line. So he completed 3 of 14 passes in relief duty for Sam Darnold last week. He's a quarterback 3. Darnold is evidently dealing not only with a concussion, but a shoulder injury. So I don't expect him to play at all. DJ Moore, they're going to scheme him touches, but in the rundown this week, I have him listed as having a tenuous grasp on a top 36 wide receiver ranking. It's that bad. Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, wide receiver 6s for fantasy purposes. Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, tight end 3s. In terms of the running backs here, Christian McCaffrey's returned to practice, but he was like limited last week. I friggin' hope they learned their lesson. I don't think that Christian McCaffrey goes anywhere near the starting lineup this week. Week 10, yeah, sure. But week 9, no, I don't think so. What does that mean for Chuba Hubbard? They're going to give him as many touches as he can handle. So he had 26 intended touches last week, 24 carries, 2 targets. With PJ Walker back there, you bet your butt they're going to continue to do that. So I've got Hubbard as a high-end running back 2 this week. It's a tough matchup against the Pats, but he could see 30 touches. In terms of the other running backs, so Royce Freeman is not good, and the team knew that. So after seeing him, giving him a couple attempts they had Rodney Smith in there. They brought in they fired up Royce Freeman for a couple weeks. They didn't like what they saw, so they brought in Amira Abdullah, who they signed 8 days before last week's game, and they brought him in and they gave him 8 carries and 5 targets. Royce Freeman only had 6 carries. So Abdullah is now the number 2 in this offense. And I think that he could see some work. It might actually be a similar workload. I only say that because of PJ Walker. He's going to have to check down. I don't think that it's going to be pretty, but I think that like in a real mean pinch, you can start Amir Abdullah as a mid to high running back 4. Minnesota Vikings at Baltimore Ravens. Over under currently set at 49.5. Going to be points both in real life and fantasy here. But what's going on with the Minnesota Vikings? Real bad stuff. So evidently Kirk Cousins revealed that he and Mike Zimmer don't actually communicate about when they're going to use timeouts. Is that relevant for fantasy purposes? Well, yeah, because it shows the state of their relationship. Kirk Cousins actually just lets Zimmer call the timeout. So it's not great. And the team and media were really angry. Just checking. No, never mind. I was looking at breaking news updates here. Sorry, y'all. So media also was all over Zimmer for not having the team prepare to cover Cooper Rush last week. They spent the entire week planning on Dak Prescott playing, and that was revealed by one of the cornerbacks, which is, not great. So the team's in disarray. They're kind of relying on their own talent, I think, with Zimmer just being I think that Mike Zimmer would make a great defensive coordinator. What does that mean for Kirk Cousins? He is, I've got him as a high-end quarterback 2. He has a really shaky floor, though. The reason I say that he's quarterback 2 is because the Baltimore Ravens, they're up there as one of the most injured teams in the NFL. Two of their injuries were suffered at the quarterback position with starters. I think it was their it was Marcus Peters and the guy who was going to replace him. And Tavon Young, their slot corner, has been banged up all year, and he's got a long injury history with re-tearing the same ACL. So what can Cousins do? I think he's mid-tier quarterback 2, who he's got a good shot at finishing as a high-end quarterback 2. Justin Jefferson, I think that Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So Jefferson can get loose behind this defensive back group, and I think that he's got a good connection with Justin Jefferson. But I think with the team kind of the boat has been rocked here, I think Cousins is going to go to the guy that he knows most, and that's Adam Thielen. So I'm putting both of them in lineups as wide receiver 2s, but they are shaky given the situation going on the team. But I don't stray away from these players just because last week was weird and they gave their fullback, however many targets. In terms of wide receivers, KJ Osborne and Tyler Conklin, tight end Tyler Conklin. So Conklin seems to have, they're alternating as the number 3 passing game weapon. This week, I think that Tyler Conklin wins that battle. Baltimore is allowing the most half-point PVR points to opposing tight ends per game, 16.7. Conklin is a mid-tier tight end 1, and I would start him if, he's the guy that I think that you should be looking at if you need a streaming tight end. Osborne, wide receiver 5. What's going on with the running backs? So I have Dalvin Cook as the FanDuel start of the week at the running back position. And that's because dual threat running backs like Dalvin Cook have been pummeling the Baltimore Ravens front 7 this season. They're currently allowing the 7th most half-point PPR running back points per game, 24.5, and their 64.6 running back receiving yards per game is 3rd most in the NFL. I think this is as good of a matchup as you can ever hope for Dalvin Cook. In terms of Alexander Madison, he's back to being a primary bell cow backup. Of note, defensive lineman Brandon Williams is battling a shoulder injury, and rotational inside linebacker Malik Harrison was hit by a stray bullet earlier this week. Terrible situation. Wrong place, wrong time. So he's on injured reserve. He was not a starter. He was a starter early in the season, but now he's just a prominent rotational guy. So those are 2 people who are and or might be missing from the starting defensive lineup. So yeah, I like Dalvin Cook's odds. In terms of the Ravens, Lamar Jackson is an elite quarterback 1. Marquis Brown, Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, and Sammy Watkins. So Watkins has returned to practice for the first time in 3 weeks. I don't think that he's going to play, but I think that he might, and he was battling a hamstring injury, so you want to be safe with that. But I think that it's a good sign, especially for next week. But this week, if he's active, great. More pass catchers, the better for Lamar's sake. Of note, Minnesota cornerback Patrick Peterson is now on injured reserve, and Cameron Dantzler is battling an ankle injury. Dantzler was the number one backup to Peterson, so they're going to be running with Bashaud Breeland, who is already really bad as the primary cornerback, and then maybe having a hobbled number 3 corner on the other end of the perimeter, and slot cornerback Mackenzie Alexander is just, bad. So Marquis Brown, high-end wide receiver 2. I think we might start considering him a wide receiver 1, but right now high-end wide receiver 2. Rashad Bateman just crushing it. I think he went 3 of 3 for 70 or so yards last week. That's great. I think that this week he is a borderline wide receiver 3/4 given the matchup. Devin Duvernay, he's just a dart throw, 4.3 speed, so he can rip one long at any point, but I've got him as a wide receiver 6 just because it's a lot of mouths to feed. With the potential, Sammy Watkins, you get it. He's a special teamer who plays in 3 wide sets. Mark Andrews, he's a high-end tight end 1, but he does have to go up against Harrison Smith, and that's a real big bummer. But don't sit him. He's a high-end tight end 1. In terms of the running backs, Latavius Murray is still battling an ankle injury. So we are all so lucky that Devontae Freeman gets to be the starting running back again this week. He's the only guy that I think that anybody should consider starting, but even then I have him only as a running back 4. Cleveland Browns at Cincinnati Bengals, over under currently set at 46.5 points. That's decent. Baker, though, he's a floor play quarterback too. The Bengals, I think that they'll be able to exploit right tackle Jack Conklin dislocated his elbow last week, and they have a pretty decent pass rush with Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, and Larry Ogunjobi. Ogunjobi's more of a run guy, but he's been getting after the quarterback a little bit this year. And they, of course, blitz slot cornerback Mike Hilton all the time. So Baker, I think he's going to be under pressure, and there's so much weird stuff going on with Odell Beckham Jr. being asked not to come into the facility because his dad's posting crazy stuff on social media, and he also wants out of there. I mean, and the world knows that he doesn't like Baker Mayfield. So it's strangeness, but Baker's a competitive guy. So maybe he proves me wrong, and he does better than a high floor quarterback 2 stuff, but I think that's where you got to rank him. Might make for interesting stacks though. In terms of the wide receiver position. So Jarvis Landry, since he returned from injury 2 weeks ago, he leads the team with 17 targets. Next closest guy has 8. So yeah, Landry, he saw 10 targets last week. He's the unquestioned wide receiver 1 in Cleveland. With Odell Beckham Jr. out, that's only helped. So you're starting Jarvis Landry as a locked in mid to high wide receiver 2. He gets to do battle against Mike Hilton, who is a great blitzer and a coverage guy. So loving that. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, they're going to be duking it out for Odell Beckham Jr.'s downfield job. What do I expect here, though? Donovan Peoples-Jones separated drastically from Anthony Schwartz 3 weeks ago. Went over 100 yards, caught 2 touchdowns. He had a good week the week before that as well. And then he followed it up by pulling his groin in pregame warmups 2 weeks ago. So in his stead, Beckham has been playing with dual terribly injured shoulders, and Anthony Schwartz hasn't done anything. So I don't think that Schwartz has a chance really of taking this job from Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I think Donovan Peoples-Jones, he'll have to continue to earn it, but I think he's going to be the starter there. And I think that he's a borderline wide receiver 3/4, kind of in the Rashad Bateman mold. Schwartz probably wide receiver 5, maybe 6. And Rashard Higgins is really just a rotational guy. He's the primary backup to Jarvis Landry. Sip water there. In terms of the tight ends, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, and Harrison Bryant, you are not starting any of them in redraft. It is a very tough matchup, and there's too many of them to consider. Interesting stuff happened here with the Browns backfield last week. I expected Chubb to get a lot more work, but the team was cautious, which was smart. In his return, they got both Dearness Johnson and Demetric Felton involved. Perhaps most surprisingly, though, they treated Dearness Johnson as more so the pass-catching rotational guy than they did Demetric Felton. I did not expect that to be the case because Demetric Felton has an all-around skill set, but I think they were so impressed with what they saw from Dearness Johnson that they got him in there as the junior varsity Kareem Hunt. He ran 12 routes to Felton's 6. He had 3 targets to, yes, 12 routes to Felton's 6 and 3 targets to Felton's 1. So I think that Chubb is like, I've got him as a running back 9, I think, on the week. Usage will be there for him to produce, but like we said, Bengals front 7 is good. Dearness Johnson is a borderline running back 3/4. He's fiddling around in the top 38, maybe. Demetric Felton is not a fantasy starter. Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, every week, quarterback 1. I put an interesting analytics read that Adam Levitan retweeted. It's interesting. They've got an analytics guy in Cincinnati now, and he's in Zach Taylor's headset. That's great. But you know what? They've only got one guy in the whole analytics department, so maybe expand that. I don't know. Quarterback 1, though. Top 12, no doubt about that. Jamar Chase, number 4 in the league in percentage of his team's air yard share at 40.9%. He's number 2 in our consistency rankings, behind a guy who got 1 game's worth of usage. He's some rotational guy in Tampa Bay. He's the number 1 in our consistency rankings in terms of how much he varies, standard deviation from his average performance. He's number 3 in the NFL in receiving yards with 786, and number 4 with 7 receiving touchdowns. He's an elite wide receiver 1. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. I think that, so I liked Ryan's suggestion that T. Higgins is a must start. I think that that's super reasonable. I think that that's sound. Last week, the team did get Tyler Boyd a little bit more involved, and he responded. He played well. I think that I have both of them as wide receiver 3s this week. I think that they can get into the wide receiver 2 game. And I get it. Like, he had 15 targets 2 weeks ago. Higgins, that is, like, the team, he is their X receiver. So I like that one. I like that one a lot. And Boyd, I think he can get the job done too, but this is not necessarily a slot matchup that we want to take advantage of. A lot of teams have weak slot defensive backs. This is not one, but I think that the team is going to continue to get him hopefully between 6 and 8 targets per week. CJ Uzoma, the dude continues to just play well when the matchup is right. And unfortunately, the matchup is not right here. Brown's rookie linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who was basically like, there was debate whether or not he was going to play safety or linebacker. He's been just killing it in coverage this season. So I think that CJ Uzoma is a tight end 2 this week. Running backs, Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. So 2 weeks ago, Perine was a big factor, and that was in a blowout win. Last week, in a back and forth exchange with the Jets, Perine barely played. I think that this week against the Browns is going to be much more similar to last week, where it's a back and forth exchange, and Joe Mixon dominates snaps and usage overall, instead of what we saw 2 weeks ago where Perine was involved. So Mixon is a back end running back 1. I think I've got him 1 spot ahead of I do. He's running back 10 in between Nick Chubb and Cordero Patterson. Samaje Perine is a running back 4. Buffalo Bills at Jacksonville Jaguars. Buffalo over under is set at 48.5 points. So points going to be scored here, probably more so on the Buffalo Bills side. The Jacksonville Jaguars are dead last in Patty Cooper's PD NEFF pass defense efficiency metrics with a score of 29.4. It's as bad as it sounds. So Josh Allen, elite quarterback 1. Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, and Gabe Davis. What's going on here? So Stephon Diggs, he's not the game-breaking or fantasy game-breaking wide receiver 1 that he was last year, because there's so many guys and everybody's playing really well. But I think that he is he's a back-end wide receiver 1, but he's a wide receiver 1 nonetheless. Emmanuel Sanders, he had a down week last week. He had 4 targets. One of them was just like an overthrow by Allen on a long gain. Cole Beasley, Gabe Davis are going to be factors this week too. Getting ahead of myself here. Emmanuel Sanders, what do I think of him? I think that he's going to be a top 36 play at the position. Cole Beasley, dealing with a rib injury. We've seen a lot of rib injuries lately. They're very painful, and they can keep guys from playing. He registered, did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday. If he can go Friday and he's good to go, you should start him. We've talked about this a lot. The Buffalo Bills scheme up targets for Beasley when they're facing a team that runs a lot of zone defense. That is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They skew very heavy towards zone as opposed to man. So this would be a week where Beasley might even operate as like the de facto number one target in the offense. But if he's unable to play because of the rib injury, well, then that's a huge bummer. So I would rank Beasley a top 24 wide receiver if he is active. If he is inactive, that more so affects Gabe Davis, who had a great game last week. Cheers, Gabe Davis. You guys know I love him. He got 4 of 5 passes for 29 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, that probably was mostly due to Dawson Knox being out. Knox kind of took his role as the number 4 passing game weapon. Knox is going to miss again with a broken hand. So Davis, I think that he is a wide receiver 4 with Beasley in, and I think he's a wide receiver 3 if Beasley is out. Tight end Tommy Sweeney, really not involved. I mean, he had 4 targets last week. Yeah, I think it was 4. I think he caught 3 of them. But it's a crowded pass catching core, and the Jags are allowing 13.5 half point PPR tight end points per game. That's 7th most in the NFL. So you could stream him, but like if Beasley is active, Davis is playing ahead of Sweeney. I think that it's going to be in the pecking order. I think it's going to be kind of tough for Tommy Sweeney to get things going. If Beasley is inactive, then you could stream Tommy Sweeney. Running backs, the pendulum swung back to Zach Moss, but they were up early last week and they kind of tried to salt the clock. They're running back 3s. Zach Moss and Devin Singletary are running back 3s. On the Jacksonville Jaguars side of things, I have Trevor Lawrence is a borderline quarterback 2/3 because the Buffalo Bills defense is allowing the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight end or to opposing quarterbacks. It's like 13 or 14. It's really bad. So you got to avoid Lawrence this week. I know garbage time will be there. Don't chase it. Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, and Jamal Agnew. You can't start Shenault. He's playing as the X receiver. When he is a slot receiver, don't start him. It's a huge bummer. Don't start Jamal Agnew either. He was start of the week last week for us. Hip, hip, hooray. He hit. Scored a touchdown late, and I think I've got his overall usage here last week. So we liked him last week because he was playing Seattle. Marquise Blair was out, and he was just going against Ugo Amadi. Blair's not good at covering the slot, but they tandem tag the slot for Seattle. And anyway, Jamal Agnew, team high 12 targets, caught 6 balls for 38 yards and a touchdown. Hope you guys started him. I know it was a strange must start, but yeah. Anyway, not a must start this week. In fact, he's a do not start. Marvin Jones Jr., he is the de facto number 1 here. I've got him as a wide receiver 4. Carlos Hyde and Dare Ogunbowale. So James Robinson, lead running back James Robinson, is dealing with a bruised heel on the bottom of his heel. He's not going to play. Carlos Hyde hoarded touches with Robinson out. I don't think Dare Ogunbowale is going to be anything. So here's the thing: the Buffalo Bills, number 2 run defense in our RDNEFF consistent or efficiency ratings, but I think Hyde's just going to get the touches. Like I think he's going to get 20 carries, and it's tough to not produce as a running back 3, as I have him ranked on that kind of usage. Houston Texans at Miami Dolphins, over under currently set at 45.5, which is kind of surprising to me. Tyrod Taylor. So in his 2 starts, he carried the ball 4 times for 40 yards and once for a 15-yard touchdown as weeks 1 and week 2. The Dolphins defense are talented, but they're not stopping teams from scoring. So I have Tyrod Taylor as he's a quarterback 2 with shockingly quarterback 1 upside. Brandon Cooks, 21 of his 70 targets came in weeks 1 and week 2 when Tyrod Taylor was the starter. I think that he returns to volume-based wide receiver 2 status this week, but he has to play against Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, and that's tough. So I get it if you were afraid. Nico Collins, Danny Amendola. I don't want you to start either of them in redraft formats. Danny Amendola was targeted a lot early in the season, or not a lot, but he was I think, number 2 targeted player in week 1 when Tyrod Taylor was playing, and then and he's seen 5 targets apiece in back-to-back contests. So like DFS appeal, you could go there with Amendola, but I'm not recommending it for redraft. Collins is more talented. He's young. We'll see what happens. Tight end Pharaoh Brown was the preferred guy, but now he's dealing with a hamstring injury. He's preferred guy, preferred tight end for Tyrod Taylor, but he's got a hamstring injury. Don't start him. Jordan Akins is like a DFS option if Pharaoh Brown is out, but I'm not telling you to start him either. Rex Burkhead, Scotty Phillips, the running back duo led the backfield last week. They each had 8 touches. Phillips didn't do shoot with it. Burkhead did a little bit. Yeah, I think he found the end zone. I've got Burkhead as a running back 5. Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa. So Tua's got an injury with one of his throwing hand fingers, but he evidently looks fine in practice. So he's going up against Houston. Their PDNEFF pass defense efficiency rating is 4th in the NFL, as is their quarterback pressure rate. So I think that you could start Tua in single QB leagues if you need to. I have a mid-tier quarterback, have him as a mid-tier quarterback too, with a little bit of top 12 upside. Devontae Parker and Jalen Waddle, it is a scary proposition, but I'm ranking both of them as top 36 wide receivers this week. Houston's defense is that bad. Mike Gesicki, mid-tier fantasy tight end 1. Myles Gaskin, Salvon Ahmed. There are means where there are routes for them both to fail. The Houston Texans are allowing the 6th most half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends at 25.3, and their 135.4 running back rushing yards allowed are number 1 per game. They're most in the NFL. So what do I think can happen here? One of 2 things. Myles Gaskin hoards lead back touches, does real great, or Salvon Ahmed, who is a rotational rusher, comes in and kind of neuters his upside. I've got Gaskin conservatively ranked as a running back 3 and Ahmed as a running back 4. If you're desperate at running back, you could roll with Ahmed, but again, there's this path to failure with Gaskin hoarding the touches. They're going to do what they want to do in the moment. Las Vegas Raiders at New York Giants, over under at 47 points. Condolences go out to the family of those lost in the Henry Ruggs car crash. That was terrible. What does it mean for fantasy purposes? I think that Derek Carr, I think we talked about this earlier. I think that he's going to lean on the guys that he knows. And he also knows that this is it's a mediocre defense that they are dealing with here. Something promising of note is that under John Gruden in weeks 1 through 5, the team was only Derek Carr dropped back he had 11.5% of his dropbacks were via play action. That's what I'm trying to say. Week 6 and 7 with Todd Downing. No, not Todd Downing, former Raiders coordinator. Blanking on the other Greg Olson, offensive coordinator for the Raiders. He jacked that drop back rate and play action drop back rate up to 32.8%. That's fantastic. So good news for Carr. I think that he is a top 12 play, but there are some X factors at play here. Hunter Renfrow immediately becomes the standalone, number 1 target in the wide receiver core. I think that he is a high floor wide receiver 3 more weeks than not, including this week. Bryan Edwards will be the X as he has been, and Zay Jones is going to replace Henry Ruggs as the Z receiver. It's kind of tough here to figure out who's going to, emerge as the higher targeted player, but I think Edwards is the safer bet. But I've only got him as a wide receiver 4 or 5. Zay Jones is going to be called upon for deep shots in this game, though. I think it's got sneaky shootout potential. So they're more DFS plays than they are redraft. Leave it at that. Darren Waller, elite tight end 1, and I think that he's going to be the go-to guy for Daniel Jones. I think that there's more to learn about his ankle injury. I saw some strange stuff about what potential damage he might have suffered. We don't know. Pay attention to it, but start him as an elite tight end 1 this week, regardless. In terms of the running backs, Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. So Jacobs was kind of seeing some promising dual threat usage before he was pulled 2 weeks ago. They had their bye in week 8. He was pulled from the game in week 7 due to a chest injury, but it might have been out of precaution. He saw some passing game usage. It's so tough to trust him. We've been down this path before. We don't know what's going on in terms of his dual threat usage. I've got him as a borderline running back 2/3 this week, and Kenyon Drake as a running back 3/4. New York Giants, Daniel Jones. So this one's interesting. The Las Vegas pass rushing group of Max Crosby, Yannick Ngakoue, Quentin Jefferson, and Solomon Thomas are very good. But Daniel Jones is a very good scrambler, and this might actually just lead to him flushing out of the pocket, either making plays on the run or taking off and racking up rushing yards. So I'm not fading him because of those reasons. I have him as a back end quarterback one. Trapdoor floor. We covered the receiving core earlier on in the show, but I'm going to reiterate it here. Kadarius Toney is a wide receiver one in fantasy this week. If all of the injuries pan out as I think they will, and outlined earlier on, meaning Galladay misses, Sterling Shepard misses, Pettis, Ross, they all miss. I think Kadarius Toney is a wide receiver one. Darius Slayton, he's a wide receiver three. I've got him written down here as a valuable wide receiver too. I think it's going to be an exchange of blows on offense here, and he is the downfield receiver. So yeah, Darius Slayton, wide receiver two. Colin Johnson, of the active wide receivers, is actually the number 2 most targeted guy in the red zone on the team for 2021. So Colin Johnson, he's like 6'7", and they're not using Evan Ingram. So I think that Colin Johnson is quietly viable as a starting fantasy wide receiver 4 in redraft. In DFS, you should probably start. In terms of Evan Ingram, he is a tight end 2. I'm not chasing. I think he had a touchdown last week. I'm not chasing that. What's going on with Saquon Barkley? So evidently the Giants had 13 false positives, which is bonkers, but he's still rehabbing his ankle injury, and he's being held to the standard of needing to produce back-to-back negative PCR tests. He's already produced 1, so I think he's going to be fine, but he's still rehabbing the ankle. So I don't think he's going to play this week. Devontae Booker and Elijah Penny. Penny's not really doing anything. Booker is operating as the full on bell cow here, and I think he's going to have room to run against the Raiders front 7. So I have got him as a mid-tier running back 2. Los Angeles Chargers at Philadelphia Eagles. Over under points scored is set at 50 right now. Justin Herbert, he has an injury on his throwing hand injury. We don't know what it is though. And in terms of Kadarius Toney, by the way, he had a hand laceration, but the expectation is that he's going to be fine. Okay, so back to Justin Herbert. We don't know what the deal is with his throwing hand, but he's practicing and he's phenomenal. So yeah, you start him as an elite quarterback 1. Mike Williams has had a slow go of it in recent weeks, but he was out there on the field for 90% of snaps, so I'm not fading him. Keenan Allen is an absolute baller. So Williams has to go up against Darius Slayton, and Keenan Allen has to go up against Avonte Maddox. But by the same token, Darius Slayton has to try to stop Mike Williams, and Avonte Maddox has to try to stop Keenan Allen. So I'm downgrading the receivers a little bit. They're wide receiver 2s, but that's it. I'm probably not ranking them worse than wide receiver 18, if not 16. They've got top 12 finishes well within their potential range of outcomes. Wide receivers Jalen Guyton and Josh Palmer are cardio men. Yeah, that's it. Hold Josh Palmer in Dynasty. Jared Cook and Donald Parham. Bill Belichick is very good at taking away tight ends. I'm not at all surprised that they were both kind of limited last week with Parham being shut out, but this week they're going up against Philadelphia, who I think is top 10 in half point PPR points allowed to opposing tight ends per game. And they choose not to invest in linebacker and safety because you can allow production in the middle of the field to tight ends and running backs and still win games. You got to stop the passing game. They know that. So what does that mean? Jared Cook and Donald Parham probably going to have a fun day out. I don't know if both of them will hit, but I think one of them will hit. My guy to choose would be Donald Parham because he brings much more to the table. He's youthful. He's 6'7". He's good. Jared Cook, though, brings the reliable veteran presence. So put them both in DFS lineups. If you need to start, you're in need of a tight end streamer, you can roll with these guys. But again, only one of them might hit. So, stream at your own risk. Running backs, Austin Eckler. We hit on this one earlier on with Ryan Reynolds. Dude's an absolute baller. He is so friggin' good. His hip injury did not limit him last week. He had over 20 intended touches with 10 or 11 targets. It's insane usage. He is a mid to high running back 1 this week. Justin Jackson had a beautiful long run last week. He suffered a quad injury, but I think that he's going to be able to play. We'll see. What it cleared up though was that Justin Jackson is the number 2 guy here. and we don't need to worry about Larry Roundtree, who I've talked ad nauseum about. He's very unathletic. And Josh Kelly, they're rotational pieces, and they'd factor in if Austin Eckler were to miss. But I think that Justin Jackson is the guy who's the best bet for 15 touches in the event that Austin Eckler misses. I don't advise that you start Justin Jackson this week, though. Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, he's got a tough outing here in the passing game, but not in the run game. The Chargers front seven is the second worst group in terms of run defense efficiency, as tracked by Patty Cooper. So Jalen Hurts, he's going to run wild here. He's an elite quarterback one. I can't recommend that you start any of the wide receivers in this matchup. Devontae Smith is the he is a wide receiver 4 in fantasy. Quez Watkins, wide receiver 5, and Jalen Reagor should not be on a team. It's just the volume won't be there this week, and it's a brutal matchup against the Chargers defensive backs group. So not recommending any of them. Dallas Goedert led the team in targets last week. He has cleared 70 yards in both games since Zach Ertz was traded. He's a very, very, very high floor tight end one, and you should start him. He'll have to go up against Derwin James, I know, but unless James is dealing with an injury, which I'm not aware of. Now I'll go check because I just spoke that into friggin' existence. But yeah, Derwin is not on the injury report. Ignore me. I didn't say that. Dallas Goedert is a great tight end one, and Derwin James is as good as it gets at strong safety. Running backs, Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, and Kenneth Gainwell. So it turns out that what the coaching staff wanted to do was trust the veterans, not the rookie. Hat tip to our old guy, Jax, who came on for our mock draft early in the season. My man. So he called this with Boston Scott. What happened? So 2 weeks ago, after Miles Sanders was out, Kenneth Gainwell was the main guy. But when you got a week to plan, you want to trust the veterans. It's kind of funny. We mentioned this. We don't need to get into it. The point is, Boston Scott is the number one running back here, followed closely by Jordan Howard. All three guys went over 12 touches this week, but last week, but Gainwell only got serious work in the fourth quarter. So I think Boston Scott is a back-end running back 3. Jordan Howard is Boston Scott is a back-end running back 2. Jordan Howard is back-end running back 3, and Kenneth Gainwell is a running back 4. Green Bay Packers at Kansas City Chiefs. Touched on this a little bit earlier with Ryan, but Jordan Love, the former first-round pick, gets to show us what he's made of. The Chiefs' pass defense comes in 30th in PDNEFF consistent or efficiency rating, so he might be able to get something going here, especially throwing it to Devontae Adams. But I don't think they're going to ask him. I don't think they're going to put that in the game plan that Jordan Love is going to be the guy. So I've got him as a volatile quarterback too. He could run a little bit. Devontae Adams stays a wide receiver 1 because I think he could see 15 targets here. I think we're going to make it as simple as possible with Aaron Rodgers on the COVID-19 reserve list and out for 10 days because he's unvaccinated. And in a way, he's lucky that he tested positive when he did, because if he tested positive tomorrow, or when you're listening to this on Friday, he'd be out for 2 games because it's a mandatory 10-day window if you're not vaccinated. But he should be able to return next Sunday, I guess, or not this coming Sunday. Yeah, but next Sunday, perhaps without practicing. Anyway, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers, so risky. At best, they're wide receiver 5s, but like so risky with Jordan Love back there. Mercedes Lewis, he's up for consideration in 2 tight end leagues. Josiah DeGuara, who, that was part of the infamous Love Dylan DeGuara draft. He's not going to do anything. I don't think he's going to do anything. Don't start. Yeah, Mercedes Lewis is a tight end 2 if you need one, but that's it. Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, I think that they're going to combine, like I said, for 30 touches or more this week. They're going to try to take the air out of the ball, run the hell out of it, and check down to Aaron Jones when they need to. Kansas City's run defense is 25th in the NFL. We talked about them. They're a little bit healthier, but I think both these guys are just going to go off. Aaron Jones is a top 5 running back, and AJ Dillon is a back end running back 2 with top 15 upside. And I'm realizing, sorry, guys, I'm going to circle back to it here, but I realized I did not double check the over-under is set of 48.5. So, points to be had here. Patrick Mahomes. So talked about it earlier. He is a back end quarterback 1, but this is the week that he gets back into the top 3. It's that kind of matchup. In terms of the receiving core, I don't think that there's any reason to fear Tyree Kill in this one. It's just as Ryan was saying, like, which one of these guys do you really want to go after when it comes to DFS lineups? So Hill, he's a high end wide receiver one, and I'm looking at the matchups right now for the tight end. Travis Kelce's been kind of down, but we don't know like if the stingers are an issue. I don't think that they are, but we can't be certain. I'm not going to rank him as anything other than a high end tight end one, though, like the number one overall tight end one. So I think you start both of these guys at top 3 positional rankings. And then in terms of the rest of the wide receiver core, so Josh Gordon is still being brought on very slowly. I don't think that he even had he had one target last week, didn't catch it. So Mecole Hardman continues to be kind of the number 2 here. It's risky because you know why it's risky to start Mecole Hardman, but he's operating as that. They could make some noise here, but I think that you can only rank him as like a borderline top 36 play. I don't know if you're really going any higher than that with Mecole Hardman. Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, super risky plays. But DFS, okay, that's fair. Then in terms of the backfield, so everybody who tuned in, for the first half of the Kansas City game last week saw Derek Gore get in on basically one drive, and he scored on that one. Outside of that, though, Darrell Williams got 13 carries and 6 targets. Derek Gore got 11 carries total. The kid can play, and they're going to keep him in there as a rotational piece. But I'm not chasing that. Like maybe he can make some noise as a running back 3 this week, but like Darrell Williams is the guy here in Kansas City. And I'm double checking my ranking of him. He's the running back 20. So stick with him as a running back 2. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was not activated off of injured reserve. So oh yeah, sorry. I got confused by my notes here. So it's still going to be the Darrell Williams show, and maybe Derek Gore gets featured a little bit more, but no higher than. Don't treat him as anything more than a shaky running back 3. So some interesting stuff going on here with Arizona, and it's my understanding, and I'm double checking this stuff live. These were sort of the last minute games that I wanted to make sure to have updated information on. So Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins both did not participate in practice on Wednesday and Thursday. Murray due to the ankle injury and DeAndre Hopkins due to the hamstring injury. What does that mean? So for the over under set at 45, which like you might think it would be higher if we didn't have some injury conundrums going on here. If Murray can't play, then it's going to be Colt McCoy, which is going to be weird. He can kind of dink and dunk his way down the field. But we just got to kind of monitor the situation on this one. It's a hold. If active, then you're starting your normal guys as normal. Murray, that is, if he's active, you're starting normal guys as normal. But, and then of course, AJ Green ended up on the COVID-19 reserve list. So I'm double checking his status right now just to see if he's managed. No updates on him. So like, we don't know. I don't know if he's vaccinated. And we're getting towards crunch time here. We need to hear news of a positive or negative PCR test. So DeAndre Hopkins, he does not have to practice to play, but he re-aggravated from what I am reading, he re-aggravated the hamstring injury last week, which is different than just managing his reps. He doesn't need to play or practice to play, but the team is already saying that he might not be a go. In that case, their 3-wide set is going to look like Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, and then I'm checking snap counts here. Antoine Wesley, I guess, who has done nothing through his however long career. Both Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore would be guys that you would want to work into lineups, especially. I mean, it's so interesting because if it's Colt McCoy, Rondale Moore might carry more value because he's the guy who can work around the line of scrimmage. He'll get involved in the run game. Christian Kirk would basically operate as the alpha receiver. This one is like, check the rundown. Like, I'm going to be updating this one, but things are very much in flux. They'd probably find themselves in the top 36, maybe top 24 if that starts to make sense, but so much is unknown at this point. And hey, more good news. Rondale Moore had another 2 carries last week. He didn't do much with it, but it's just nice to see him getting this dual threat usage. So check back, hit me up on Twitter. TBD on a lot of this San Francisco stuff on the San Francisco side of the ball. So of course, it's the weekly quarterback question of what's going on with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. Doesn't look like Trey Lance is he had the mild knee sprain. He's not on the injury report anymore. Garoppolo is probably still going to be Garoppolo is still going to be the starter here, but it is possible that Trey Lance gets in for some reps. But anyway, Lance just needs to be on your bench. Garoppolo against this defensive front, I mean, they can generate some movement against the passer or pressure on the passer. Defensive tackle Rashard Lawrence of the Cardinals, he was downgraded to a DNP this week. JJ Watt is still DNP, which I thought he was already announced as out for the season. I don't know why they're updating his practice status. That's bizarre. But and James Wiggins, safety. Just trying to figure out now. He's a special teamer. So anywho, Garoppolo, he's the same old like high end quarterback too. He went off against the Bears last week with a couple of rushing scores though. So I don't think that's going to be the case. That might have just been him trying to flex on Trey Lance. In terms of this week, high floor quarterback two with top 12 upside. Sure, I'll go with it. In terms of the wide receiver core, Deebo Samuel ended up with a DNP on Wednesday, got back to practice, limited capacity on Thursday. He needs to remain as a high-end wide receiver one until we see otherwise, though. Like if I think he might have been. I know that Elijah Mitchell was in the blue non-contact jersey. I don't think that Deebo was. I think he's just out there limited, so he should be cocked, locked, and ready to rock. His game logs are preposterous. He's a I don't know, the wide receiver 6 on the week. He's a mid to high wide receiver 1. Awesome stuff from Brandon Ayuk broke about an hour and a half ago, where he said that he had some talks with the coaches where they basically told him what you need to do to be a pro. We touched on this on the Monday show where he saw 7 targets last week. That was a season high. He was involved on a 2-point conversion, and that he did convert. So the fact that they're scheming him up touches, like, that's fantastic. And the offensive coordinator was saying that Brandon is starting to look like the guy that we drafted him to be, which is fantastic. Try not to be profane, but Brandon Ayuk is, like, no joke here. I might rank him as a wide receiver 2 this week, because what he's doing is he's doing things off the field that they wanted to see. That's what all this means. He's being a professional off the field. That's what they wanted to see. In terms of the remaining wide receivers, you got Mohamed Sanu and Trent Sherfield, and I don't think either one of them are fantasy relevant because of the fact that Brandon Ayuk is now, working on his footwork. He's watching film. He's conducting himself well in the locker room, or whatever the hell else was going on there. Those guys are kind of negated now. They're relegated to just bench stashes or free agency, not fodder, if you will, but you get what I'm saying here. So I'm checking the news on George Kittle. All that we have is that on Wednesday, Kyle Shanahan said that he expects George Kittle to be back. If he's available, he is a high-end tight end 1. He will have to play against Isaiah Simmons, and that's tough, but he's George Kittle, and he can go out there and get 8 targets and rip a long one to the house. In terms of the backfield, so this continues to be, as we've talked about as of late, Elijah Mitchell is the lead back here. Now he is dealing with, he must have just taken a hard hit to the ribs, because he's in the blue non-contact jersey. I didn't note that in the news at all in previous weeks, but he is practicing in a limited capacity, which means that he's good to go. He's the lead back here. He's seen 18 carries in consecutive weeks. There's a silly thing that David Lombardi reported that Trent Williams was hit in the back by Mitchell on one of his carries, and it was the hardest he's ever been hit by a running back since Adrian Peterson. Great, very nice of Trent to say, who's back to practicing. So that's fantastic. Left tackle Trent Williams is back to practicing with his ankle injury. He might actually play this week. That would be massive for everybody involved. But you are treating Elijah Mitchell now as a safe. I've got him as a running back one. I've got him as the RB12 this week, but he's a safe top 15 play. JaMycal Hasty continues to be the number 2 running back. He's involved in the passing game. Now, Kyle Juszczyk got a little bit of use through the air, but Hasty has this job. He has the pass catching game job, and we should all be really excited about it. He needs to be rostered across all formats. Notably, the Arizona Cardinals are top, looks like 8 in the NFL in running back receptions, 6.9 allowed per game, and maybe top 10 in running back receiving yards with 49.1. So in a deep format, JaMycal Hasty can be started as a full point PPR running back 3. Yeah, maybe. Trey Sermon is he needs to have that talk with Kyle Shanahan about how he's going to be more professional. He did not get a single carry last week and just is a crazy friggin' bust. On to Sunday Night Football. So Tennessee Titans at Los Angeles Rams. A lot of moving parts in this one. Okay. So updated over under is 54 points. That's got to be the highest one on the slate right now. You're going to want to start players in this game. The biggest, or not the biggest, but there's so much injury news to digest here. So Ryan Tannehill should be started as a fantasy tight end 1. Oh gosh, that's tough to say, but tight end 1, fantasy quarterback 1. Maybe he's the quarterback 13 here. It's going to be a shootout. The Rams defense is very good, and it's only better now with Von Miller there. They're going to get after him. Jalen Ramsey is going to be prowling the nickel or the slot in the perimeter. But points when two offenses are able to interact like this is the kind of thing that we want to chase. In terms of injuries that are relevant to us. So I believe Julio Jones was not practicing, picked up a limited practice on Thursday. Jeez Louise, they're making him play through this. Okay. All right. If he's active, then that helps Tannehill. I think Tannehill can be started as a quarterback 1 this week. And I know that's kind of wild against the Rams, but I think that's the case. AJ Brown, wide receiver 1. Don't even think about it. Don't question it. Julio Jones, as volatile of a wide receiver 2 as you can ever dream up. I have not checked the slot snap shares on this one, so I'm not sure who it is that's going to be operating as the number 3 or primary slot receiver rather. Marcus Johnson has been the primary backup for Julio, but then Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is out there, and yeah, so it's a jumbled mess at the slot receiver position. And I apologize for doing this live. There were a couple of these that I wanted to just have up to date info on for all of you guys. So I'm looking at slot usage right now. Okay, so wide receivers slot. So AJ Brown actually led with the yeah, that makes sense. Chester Rogers. Oh, they brought Chester Rogers back into the mix. Oh my gosh. Okay. So basically, you're starting AJ Brown as a wide receiver 1. If you want, you're starting Julio Jones as a wide receiver 2. Extremely volatile though. And then Chester Rogers is like the guy to start as a wide receiver 4, perhaps, but Westbrook-Ikhine is going to get in there as well. It's a pick your poison option. In terms of the tight end position, Jeff Swaim was out targeting Anthony Ferkser last week, and as far as I'm seeing here, Ferkser's not on the injury report. So maybe Swaim, who is already having a scoring position role, he might just be the guy there now, or at least in the short term. But are the Rams? I'm not sure that the Rams are really known as like a team that you actually want to look at. Now, okay, 13.2 half point PPR points per game allowed to opposing tight ends. I guess if you need a guy, you could start Jeff Swaim, but like very, zero floor tight end here. And then in terms of the backfield, we're guessing. Adrian Peterson, I think gets 12 carries I think that he gets I think he gets 12 to 15 touches at worst. I think he's in the 12 to 15 touch range. The Rams defense is very middling on the ground in terms of what they're doing in terms of like limiting opposing running backs. Von Miller's addition, that's notable, but it's a very good offense. And I think Adrian Peterson is just going to be able to get the job done. The problem that we might run into, so he's my start of the week or stream of the week. The problem is, of course, that he's going to be going from not doing a lot of work to doing a lot of work. What does that mean? Well, he's at an elevated risk of soft tissue injury. If you need a running back, though, don't think about it. Just get Peterson in there. Jeremy McNichols should be rostered in all formats, though, because McNichols is a capable dual threat back, and he's going to be the pass catching guy. So I think 6 targets, maybe even 8 targets with 6 carries. That's a lot. I mean, that's more than he's had all year, but he needs to be rostered. And I think that McNichols can be started. Where do I have him? I've got him as a running back 3. I'm not interested, I want to emphasize this. I'm not at all interested in Dante Foreman. Running backs, they can't come back from they have yet to come. We've yet to see someone successfully come back from an Achilles rupture. And so I don't think that he's going to be the guy to do it. Final team here, Los Angeles Rams. So this is kind of strange, or something is going on. Matthew Stafford has registered back-to-back, did not participate with a back injury. Back injuries don't go away. This is it's very likely going to be a season-long thing. But Sean McVay is saying that he's going to play. I don't blame him for not making him practice, but back injuries, they can be volatile. All that said, should you start him? Yeah, probably as a quarterback 1, because he's playing the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, all they do is allow receiving production. Okay. They have a bunch of injuries across their defense. And they're just lacking in talent. They have a couple stars, but that's it. They're still number 1 in the NFL in wide receiver, half point PPR points per game allowed, with 39.2. They've extended their margin again after last week. They're now over 2.5 points more, 2.5 points allowed more than the next closest team. So Matthew Stafford, he's the quarterback 1. Does he carry risk? Yeah, he absolutely does. If you have a great option, then okay, you could go with that. But this is the matchup you dream of. Cooper Kupp, elite wide receiver 1. In terms of the backup there, Devlin Hodges or John Wolford, I guess, you could stream one of them as a quarterback 2 if Stafford's out. Cooper Kupp, elite wide receiver 1 here. Robert Woods, you could maybe rank Robert Woods as a wide receiver 1 here. Definitely as a high-end wide receiver 2, but maybe as a wide receiver 1. So the team cut Deshaun Jackson as well. That means Van Jefferson is in there as the full-time downfield guy against this team. Start him as a wide receiver 3. In terms of the tight end position, so Tyler Higbee's usage continues to be pretty decent. It is that of course, last week, okay, he got 3 targets. Jeez. He's a tight end 1, but it's not a glorious one. And I'm double checking the Tennessee production allowed. It's they're actually limiting guys. So I don't know. I mean, Devlin Hodges, if Hodges is in there, then he might check down to him. But Higbee I'd rank him as maybe the tight end 11 on the week. And then in terms of the running back, we're going to close on a high note here. Terrell Henderson Jr. is just an absolute beast. This guy is proving that he is durable. He is capable. 14 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown last week. Caught one of his 2 targets for a 3-yard score. Sonny Michel, he got 9 carries for 42 yards. I think I've got Michel in here as he's a running back 4, and maybe I should move him up to running back 3. Running back 3 rankings. But what we do know for sure is that Darrell Henderson is a mid-tier running back 1. He's just getting it done every single week. His skill set is that of a dual threat. If Stafford is to miss time, then they're just going to load him up with carries at this point. I feel very strong. Darrell Henderson, he's going to smash this week. Making sure that I'm not missing. Oh, that's what I was missing. Cam Akers is getting a lot of buzz as look at what he's doing. He looks good on air. They're conflicting. You just listen to the medical professionals and find one you trust and listen to what they have to say. Edwin, we had him on last week. He's studying the literature, and it does not look like any running back has ever made a successful comeback here. And I understand that the sample size is very small, but he's not a guy that I'm going to be putting my money on as a solid guy to come back and return this season and do great things. And even next year, I don't think that's going to be the case. But there are those who are impressed. I think it was Jeff Mueller who was recommending that everyone roster him. I'm not going to give that recommendation, but if you're desperate or actually if you're comfortable at running back and you can afford to have somebody just sit on the end of the bench or on your injured reserve spot, then Cam Akers, sure, but he is not someone who I am looking at as a serious contributor in 2021. That'll do it, y'all. Thank you again so much for coming on. Thank you, Ryan. That was so much fun to talk to you. I've corresponded with him a lot. He's very kind with our draft guide. It was great talking to you, Ryan. It was great talking to all of you listeners. Thanks so much. This is always a blast. Hit me up on Twitter at @ginger__Nick, spelled NIC. Hit us up at NerdballFF.